We are the Ministry of the Real Truth, and today we are going to look at the book by renowned science fiction writer Isaac Asimov. He wrote I, Robot, Bicentennial Man, etc. This is his guide to the Bible, the Old Testament, Volume 1. But first we're going to have a look at an interview that he had with a Paul Kurtz in his day. And it reads, Isaac Asimov on Science and the Bible, Free Inquiry, Spring 1982. Paul Kurtz, the interviewer, asks him, in your view, Asimov, is the Bible widely known and intelligently read today? Isaac Asimov, it is undoubtedly widely known. It is probably owned by more people than any other book. As to how widely it is read, one cannot be certain, and he supposed that it was read very widely in the sense that people just looked at the words and read it mechanically. And he asked how many people actually think about the words they read. He's not certain at all. They can go to a house of worship and hear verses read without thinking about what the words mean. Undoubtedly millions of people do. Kurtz, there used to be something called the higher biblical criticism. What has happened to that? Asimov, he was constantly hearing from people who accepted the Bible more or less literally that the higher criticism had been outmoded and discredited, but he didn't believe that at all. It was just something that people say who insist on clinging to the literal truth of the Bible. The higher criticism, which in the 19th century, for example, tried to show that the first few books of the Bible contained several strains that could be identified and separated, and Asimov thought it as valid today, in his era, he was alive, as it ever was. Fundamentally, there was a J document and a P document in the early chapters of Genesis, and an E document later on. We had no doubt that as one continues to investigate these things, one constantly learns and raises new questions. That's in regard to the Book of Q by the Friends of Jesus Society, because they found that in the margins, when that's translated, they found in the margins who actually copied the text, what date, and they had initials E, P, S, etc., which represented E, evangelical, S, scribe, P, priest, etc. Again, fundamentally there was a J document and a P document, or there is a J and a P document in the early chapters of Genesis, and an E document later on. He had no doubt that as one continued to investigate those things, one constantly learned and raised new questions. Kurtz, but by and large the public does not know much about this skeptical, critical interpretation of the Bible. Would you say that is so? Asimov, yes. Just as by and large the public doesn't know about any of the disputes there have been about quantum theory, the public knows only what it reads in newspapers and sees on television, and this is all extremely superficial. Kurtz, one thing that he was struck by was that in that period, in that time, in America, they didn't have a free market of ideas in regard to religion and the Bible. But Asimov was an outstanding exception. He's taken the Bible seriously and had submitted it to critical analysis. He's talking about Asimov, of course. Would you agree that although free inquiry concerning the Bible goes on in scholarly journals and perhaps in university classes and in some books, the public hears mostly pro-religious propaganda, such as from the pulpits of the electronic church, from various religious publications, and from the daily press, and very rarely any kind of questioning or probing of biblical claims? Asimov, he imagined that the large majority of the population, in the United States at least, either accepted every word of the Bible as it was written, or gave it very little thought, and would have been shocked to hear anyone doubt that the Bible was correct in every way, or is correct in every way. So when someone said something that sounds as though he assumes the Bible was written by human beings, fallible humans, beings who were wrong in this respect or that, he can rely on being vilified by large numbers of people who are essentially ignorant of the facts, and not many people care to subject themselves to this. Kurtz, do you take the Bible primarily as a human document, or do you think it was divinely inspired? Asimov in reply, the Bible is a human document. Much of it is great poetry, and much of it consists of the earliest reasonable history that survives. Samuel 1 and 2 antedates Herodotus by several centuries. A great deal of the Bible may contain successful ethical teachings, but the rest is at best allegory and at worst myth and legend. Frankly, Asimov didn't think that anything is divinely inspired. He thought everything that human beings possess of intelligent origin is humanly inspired, with no exceptions. Kurtz, earlier you said that the Bible contained fallible writings, but what would some of these be? Asimov, in his opinion, he stated the biblical account of the creation of the universe and of the earth and humanity is wrong in almost every respect. Don't forget, he was an atheist, even though he didn't really have any problems with religion. He believed that those cases where it can be argued that the Bible is not wrong are, if not trivial, then coincidental. And he thought that the account of a worldwide flood, as opposed, say, to a flood limited to the Tigris-Euphrates region, is certainly wrong. Yes, we have a book, The Timetables of History by Bernard Grun, based on Werner Stein's Culture Farplan, third revised edition, that actually states on page 3 that these floods happened in the Mesopotamian region only. That would be under G, Daily Life, in that particular book. So the other, we believe, verified by science, was a great flood, perhaps a meteorite hit the earth, caused tidal waves, which caused earthquakes, floods, etc. So that's why it was global. It's only because that's what we've come across. Kurtz, the creationists think there was evidence for the Noachian flood. Asimov, the creationists think there is evidence for every word in the Bible. And he thought that all of the accounts of human beings living before the flood, such as Adam and Eve and Cain and Abel, are at best very dim memories of ancient Sumerian rulers. And even the stories about Abraham, Isaac and Jacob, he thought rather are vaguely legends. Kurtz, based on oral tradition? Asimov, yes, and with all the distortions that oral traditions sometimes undergo. Kurtz, in your book, in the beginning, that's another one you could probably read, you say that creation is a myth. Why do you think that it is scientifically false? What are some of the main points? Asimov, well, all of the scientific evidence we have seems to indicate that the universe is billions of years old, but there is no indication whatsoever of that in the Bible if it is interpreted literally rather than allegorically. Creationists insist on interpreting it literally, i.e. that everything was done in 6 days. Well, we're at the Ministry of the Real Truth, looking at the original ancient, very old Tab Asher manuscripts, hand copied by scribes in High around 800 BCE, translated in English by a native-born Aramaic-speaking translator, Victor N. Alexander, actually speaks of it, the creation act, being unfathomable, immeasurable, an immeasurable period, era, eon, age, or day with capital D, not specifically or literally saying all was done in 6 to 7 days. God took his time, and more. We've already covered that in our other videos. Check them out. So again, he says all these stories are memories of ancient Sumerian rulers, and even the stories about Abraham, Isaac and Jacob he rather thought were vague legends. Kurtz, based on oral tradition? Asimov, yes, and with all the distortions that oral traditions sometimes undergo. But don't forget, the ancients, when they passed it on orally, it had to be word for word. You had to have it correct exactly what they were saying, up until that point where they found clay, reeds to inscribe letters and all that sort of stuff, which became that cuneiform language, writing system, etc. So in his book, the beginning, well, etc., he goes on about scientific evidence that seems to indicate that the universe is billions of years old, but there's no indication whatsoever of that in the Bible. Well, in the ancient manuscripts, we just detailed it. Kurtz, it is 4.5 billion years old. according to information they had, it's probably science, in relation to science, the Earth is billions of years younger than the universe. Kurtz is 4.5 billion years old. Asimov, the Earth is, and the universe is possibly 15 billion years old. The universe may have existed 10 billion years before the Earth, but according to the biblical description of creation, the Earth, the Sun, and the Moon, and the stars were all created at the same time. As a matter of fact, according to the Bible, the Earth itself existed from the beginning, whereas the stars, Sun, and Moon were created on the fourth day. That would be the ones above it, right? It might be a different kind of... how do you put it? How would we put it? Have a dome, and then within that dome have stars and all this sort of stuff. Well, that's just an idea. It could be something slightly different there. Don't quote us on it. Okay, so we go to the next page. Yeah, something like that. Not too sure. Still thinking about on that one. Because it's written that everything was created in so much time. Yeah. You have to go study that yourself. Okay. Have a look at the videos on the Brito with Genesis that we've put up on the creation process. Okay, so Kurtz continues and says, yeah, they got it backwards. Asimov, they have that backward, and they have plant life being created before the sun. All the evidence we have indicates that this is not so. Well, it's actually written as two great lights. Possibly, yeah, water helps the seed. Just got to have a bit of warmth there. Etc. All related to plants and seeds and stuff like that. We're not scientists, so, but yeah, just common sense logic. Yeah, two great lights in Genesis. Okay, all the evidence we have indicates that this is not so. The Bible says that every plant, every animal was created after its own kind, which would indicate that species have been as they are now from the very beginning and have never changed. Despite what the creationists say, fossil record, as well as very subtle biochemical evidence, geological evidence, and all sorts of other evidence, indicates that species have changed. They've evolved over the millenniums. Okay, they're adapting to the environment, you know, the heat, the cold, the wet, etc. Possibly in that sense. That there has been a long evolutionary process that has lasted over 3 billion years. Kurtz, it's not simple biology that they are questioning, but geology, astronomy, and the whole basis of the physical sciences. Asimov, if we insist on the Bibles being literally true, then we must abandon the scientific method totally and completely. There's no way of that. We can at the same time try to discover the truth by means of observation and reason, and also accept the Bible as true. And he goes on and on. Another 7 or 8 pages. It's quite interesting. Something interesting. Asimov, when asked, said the same thing in an argument about what he called the Reagan doctrine. Earlier in what he already considered his disastrous administration, Ronald Reagan, former US president, said that one couldn't believe anything the Soviets said because they didn't believe in God. In Asimov's view, maybe you can't believe anything the Soviets say, but not for that reason. If you are ethical only because you believe in God, you are buying a ticket to heaven or trying to tear up your ticket to hell. In either case, you are just being a shrewd profiteer, nothing else. The idea of being ethical is to be ethical for no reason except that it is a way to be if you want the world to run smoothly. And Asimov states here, he thought that people who say virtue is its own reward or honesty is the best policy have the right idea. And Kurtz asked him near the end of the interview, So you have the courage of your convictions, Asimov. I suppose so, or it may just be a desire to avoid the unpleasantness of shame. Unfortunately, many people define wickedness not according to what a person does, but according to what a person believes. So an atheist who lives an upright and noble life, let us say, is nevertheless considered wicked. Indeed, a religious believer might argue that an upright and noble atheist is far more wicked than an atheist who happens to be a murderer or a crook. Kurtz, is this because the atheist lacks faith in God, and that is considered the ultimate sin? Asimov, yes. The atheist who is a murderer or a crook gives a bad example for atheism and persuades everyone else not to be atheistic. But a noble and upright atheist, so the believer fears, causes people to doubt the existence of God by the mere fact that a person who does not believe in God can still be upright and noble. Religious believers might argue that way, but Asimov thought that is a horrible perversion of thought.